You are listening to the Wildlife Photography Podcast with Rob Reed and Josh Galicki, bringing together the love of nature and photography. Episode 32. We discuss printing your work. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Wildlife Photography Podcast with me, Rob Reed, and my co-host Josh Galicki. Hey Josh, how's it going?
Hey, good, Rob. How are you?
Yeah, just had a busy couple of months. It's sort of, I can't believe we're in March already. I don't know where 2025 has been disappearing to, but yeah, it's been really busy on a personal front with lots of things going on. So not much time for photography, unfortunately. But yeah, how about you? You've been out a bit more than me, hopefully.
A ditto would be an understatement to that saying, but yeah, same
Well,
here.
you think something's going on in America? It's like,
So yeah,
quiet, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, it's just smooth sailing here, but I've had a little bit of time for shooting, and March is kind of an oddball month for us over here because a lot of the ducks, the winter birds, they're kind of moving out, but a lot of the spring arrivals haven't come yet. So we've got a couple of weeks until we start to see some songbirds.
It's sort of that transition, isn't it? And you get those sort of flat spots in that transition. So yeah, same here really.
Yeah,
but,
and there's variability. Some birds may stick around a little longer. Like I've noticed tundra swans back here, they've gone, but in some years they'll stay longer. But I think right now they're gone, and some of the ducks will, start flying away now too. So it always depends. You can have a little bit, or you could have a lot more. It just depends on the year. So it's kind of this weird month, just like October and November is similar.
When the opposite happens. But I mean the weather started to warm up a little bit here, although today's been a bit cold, but yesterday we had I think about 17 degrees or something like that, 17 degrees C. So it was warm and sunny, so all the spring flowers are starting to grow, and some of the warblers are starting to come back. I mean, I heard chiffchaff, for example.
Oh, great.
I've been hearing them for the last sort of week or so. So yeah, things are starting to happen, and things are starting to wake up. So I just love this time of the year because you can look forward to all those sort of spring flowers, and you said the spring migrants coming and all that sort of thing. So yeah, it's I need same old. Need to get out more.
But anyway. Every day you can see the change, which is nice too. You look forward to it. You can appreciate it.
Yeah, and it's nice to see some sun. I mean, we've just had such a wet and miserable winter again. But so it's nice to see that globe in the sky, and of course the higher angle of it now as well means you get a lot more warmth, and the days are extending and that sort of thing. So
we just had spring forward, so we advanced our clocks by an hour. We lost an hour this past weekend, but I'm fine with it. And like tonight, it's going to get dark just after 7 p.m., which is fantastic, and it's just going to keep going longer and longer. So
that doesn't happen for a couple of weeks, I think. So which is why the backstory to this is I kind of screwed up the timing for this recording because I didn't realize there was that difference. But anyway, it always happens. It happens in the autumn as well. I think we go earlier than you.
We should just get rid of it, to be honest. But another one of our quirky.
Screws you up, doesn't it? Yeah,
it does.
Isn't that related? Isn't it something to do with World War II or something? And
I've
trying
heard
to give the farmers a bit more time, or
the farmers, and then the kids at the bus stop. More like I've heard a couple of different things. Maybe there's a little bit of truth in it. I haven't dug too deep in it, but I've heard the farming, and I've heard for kids at the bus stop. So both seem a little crazy to me, at least in this day.
I get it, but it's like, hang on a minute, that was a long time ago. Can't we sort this out? It confuses everybody. I mean, anyway. All I know is we've got a lot more daylight now, which is a relief, because I don't know about you, but I mean, I love the winter light to shoot in, but man, the days are short sometimes, and you just it gets a bit depressing when you get into that sort of Christmas period in particular, and going into January, and it just seems it's sort of never-ending darkness. But
and you're more physically active. I don't know. I just like the longer days, the warmer months. There's just a lot more and you're outside more. Even if you do try to get outside as much as you can in the wintertime, you're consistently outside less. There's a lot less vitamin D going on. So I'm totally with you.
Yeah, exactly. So welcome to the sunshine, and welcome to the spring, everybody.
You're here.
Yeah. Absolutely. And hopefully some of those migrants coming in.
Definitely.
Good to see. Anyway, what we thought we'd talk about today is printing, which is something that I don't think many people actually do. We're all sort of obsessed with looking at images online, obviously, because we take them digitally, we process them on the screens and put them on social media. But a lot of people just never end up with a physical print in their hands, which I think is a shame. And obviously, this is something that you in particular wanted to talk about, Josh, because for a particular reason. So why don't you sort of take the lead on this and explain the thought process behind the subject?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and we've mentioned this as part of other podcasts, but I've always said that having a print in your hand, that tactile experience and looking at your image and holding your image on a piece of paper, that's really the final step of the process. And a lot of people don't print, or they rely on other folks to make prints for them, or they'll do it occasionally and whatnot. Recently, I've been printing for years. I used to print with a Canon, I think it was called a Pro 100. It was kind of a prosumer printer. The largest print was like a 13 by 19. And recently, or a few years ago, I upgraded to a Canon Image ProGraph 1000, and that prints, 4 by 6 all the way up to 17 by 22. So you can print some really big sizes there. So I've been printing for a number of years, and I enjoy it. But I think, when it comes to printing, you only want to choose, I think, photos that are special to you and that you think will look good on the wall. I have many images over the years that I've taken. I've never printed them just because I don't think they look good in a print. If I'm going to print something, I want the image to be a fine art photograph, something that's artistic, something that the layman, it doesn't have to be a bird or saying, "Oh, that's a Colima warbler. That's so cool. I want that on my wall." That's not normally the case. You're selling to the public, and you're not selling to bird enthusiasts for the most part. You're selling to people who want just a pretty image on their wall, and if they're into nature, all the better. That is like the area.
So you're not printing the record shot, as it were. You're printing that artistic interpretation of a subject.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I completely get it. I mean, I think the problem with printing generally is, and I fall into this trap quite a lot, is I do love printing my work, and I'm with you. I will only print something if I think it's worthy of going on the wall. I think that's a good measure to look at, what goes through, the printer and uses all that expensive ink and the paper.
It's not cheap.
It's not cheap, and we'll get onto that. But is what you're printing worthy of going on the wall? As you're looking at on the screen, if the answer to that is yes or possibly, then that's when I'd look at a print. But I think that, for me anyway, happens so rarely that's why I don't do it that often. And then you get into a problem where if you've got an inkjet print, I've got a Epson Shore Color, so it goes up to A3 plus. So what's that?
I think that's 13 by 19.
Yeah, 13 by. So it's a good size print, but I do it so rarely that every time I come to use the printer, the nozzles are blocked,
and then you have to use
half the ink cartridge to clean the bloody thing, and then you're out of ink and then it costs you £25 or $30 or whatever it is for a new card, just one, and there's 9 of them in there. So you're thinking, hang on, to replace the whole ink set, you're looking at, a significant amount of money. And then and we can talk about paper as well, but then if you're using a decent quality paper, that's a couple of pounds or $2 or $3 a sheet.
Yeah.
For that sort of size. So actually, when you look at it, every time you print something, if you only print the odd 1 or 2 things, it's probably costing you £20 or $20 or whatever for one print. And
it's not worth it. To your point, Rob, I completely agree. If you're just going to print every so often for yourself or hang something on the wall, it's probably not worth it. I mean, if you look at a print, if you 17 by 22, 13 by 19 with the paper, the ink, it's $5-6 a print. Maybe that's gone up over the years. Like my ProGraph 1000, when I bought it, and this has been a few years now, I think it was close to $1,000, maybe a little more. The ink set for it was $850. So when you think about it, but you know, if I'm printing and I'm selling these prints, it more than makes up for itself, right? You know, so
no,
it
I get
depends on
that.
the situation.
Yeah. I mean, if you're making money from selling prints, and that's a tough thing to do in the photography business, is selling
Yeah,
prints. If you're doing that, then I completely get the investment, because it's worth it, because you want to give people the best possible quality. If, like for most people that will listen to this, you are printing for your own purposes or to give them as gifts to family or whatever, then you're probably looking at, you know, that sort of 10 to 15 bucks a print, I would think, level, if you've got a reasonable printer. Uh,
mm-hmm.
and said, how often do you do it? I mean, the more often you print, the cheaper it will be, for the reasons I've described. Because if you're cleaning your heads every time you go to print because you haven't printed for a couple of weeks or whatever, then you're going to use most of the ink in those really tiny ink
Yeah,
cartridges. Because this is one thing that's always got me about printing, is that the printers themselves, not necessarily cheap, but when you consider the overall package, are relatively cheap when you look at the cost of the ink, because the companies themselves are making the money from the consumables, not necessarily the hardware.
yeah,
So every time you buy these, you know, and they all say, yeah, you've got to get the inks that are compatible. You know, got to get the proper manufacturer inks, because otherwise they're not compatible. And we can't guarantee the quality and, you know, the trueness of the color and everything else, and the longevity of the print and all this sort of stuff. If you don't use, and a lot of them, if you buy inks that aren't necessarily brand named, they won't work in the printer anyway, because the chips aren't compatible and all this sort of stuff. So you've got to be a bit careful. So they get you
yeah,
that way. So they get you on the consumables, and it is
yeah,
that costs the money.
yeah, definitely.
The paper I can stomach. Is just yeah,
Even some of the paper costs me money. Like I like to use Hanemule paper, the matte
yeah,
paper, or the Barita, some of the semi-gloss stuff. It's fairly expensive, and you know, so if you're not selling a lot of your work, or you're not selling your work consistently, it's probably not a good idea to get your own printer. That said, I think if you want to have an image printed for yourself, or you want to go through, you know, any of these online companies, you know, there's so many out there. I've used a couple over the years. Bay
yeah. Me
Photo is
too.
one, like through SmugMug I use from my site at times. There's still, I think, a couple of principles you need to know when you're ordering that, because you're still going to need to know, okay, well, you know, once I choose the image I want printed, how big do I want it? What type of paper? Do I want a matte paper, a luster? Do I want something, you know, glossy? And then how do you frame it? Do you frame it yourself? Do you have the print shop try to frame it? So there's all these decisions that come into play. So I think even if you don't own a printer and you're selling your work, it's still important to know the important aspects of how you should process your image and what kind of paper and frame and so forth that you select. So those are
Yeah,
all
absolutely.
things.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that paper is as important as the ink
Yeah,
that you
totally.
choose for the image, because there's such a vast array of choice out there. It's not just, you know, is it gloss, is it semi-gloss, is it matte? You've got textured paper, you've got paper with a, you know, that have slightly warmer tones in it than other, you know, and that can make a difference to your end print, obviously, because
Hmm.
your whites are going to be slightly warmer, or you could go for something with a bit more of a cool feel. So all those things come into play. So it's not just, you know, what the printer you're using, what inks you're using. A lot of it comes down to the paper. And I said I
Yeah.
quite like some of that textured paper if you're doing like woodland stuff, for example, to have a
Oh,
little
I
bit of a
agree.
texture in a matte paper, for example,
Yeah.
would be my go-to thing, because I think that really adds something to it,
Yeah.
because you're talking about a very textured subject in the pure nature of it. It's nice to have that mirrored in the paper that you printed on. Whereas if
Totally
you're
agree.
going for something which is, say, quite minimalist, a high key image or whatever, then I wouldn't want that, because I wouldn't want the texture. You know, it's almost a distraction at that point. You want something clean and smooth.
Yep.
So
I
yeah, paper choice is quite critical.
I totally agree. You know, I just ran some prints out not that long ago of when I was in Amboseli in Kenya a couple of years ago. Elephants, black and white, texture, and the whole image was all about texture. Those images looked great in matte prints.
Yeah.
However, if I have, you know, for instance, I was just making a print of a semi-palmated, I'm sorry, it was a leaf sandpiper, but it was backlit. It was all black with the rim light and some bokeh around it. And when you have a lot of blacks, those look great in semi-gloss and luster. So if you have an image that's predominantly dark tone, shadows and blacks, they don't normally look good in the matte. Blacks aren't as deep and aren't as rich in matte paper. So I would, you know, err on the side of like a semi-gloss or a luster. But when you're doing these luster papers, you have to be careful because I have one type of paper Canon sells. It's called the Platinum Pro, I think is it called? I think it's Platinum Pro, but it's super glossy. So it has so much sheen to it that, you know, any type of, if you have glass in front of it or any reflective surface or even the print itself, because it's so shiny, you have it in the wrong area, in the wrong light, the whole thing is glared. You're just
exactly. You got to be so careful, haven't you?
Yeah. So there's all these different considerations you have to take into account. But generally speaking, if they're like soft pastels, lots of textures, I err on the side of a matte print. If there's a lot of rich colors and blacks and shadows, I err on the side of like a semi-gloss or a luster.
Because you want it to pop.
Yeah.
As opposed to you want it to be more muted.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I get it entirely, and yeah, I agree. So, yeah, paper choice is quite, you know, is quite critical in these things. But
yeah,
I think
I've seen differences too because there's different companies. You know, Canson I've printed with, Hahnemühle, Canon has paper. Some of the fine art papers are much thicker than some of the other types of papers. But just I would just say too, you know, like anything else, experiment with different ones. And I normally, like when I print here, I'll experiment with very small sizes. And then if I like the result, then I'll buy the bigger paper so it doesn't cost me as much.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key, isn't it? I mean, because the cost can just run away with you. If you start test printing on A3 plus or whatever, that's a lot of ink and that's a lot of paper.
And you're waiting a couple of minutes, you know, 5-10 minutes sometimes for these things to come out, you know. That is exciting though, when it comes out with these large prints. Like if I'm running a 17 by 22 out and you start to see it come out, it's kind of exciting.
Do you sit over the printer and like watch every little line as it's being printed? Yeah.
I do. I do. Yeah. And that's the thing too, for folks who are, if you're going to have a online shop or you're going to have a local print shop, make that print for you, or you're printing it yourself, it's important to understand how the image needs to be processed. I've found historically from printing over the years that the image always appears brighter on your monitor than when it comes out from the printer. So I always have to bump up the brightness. If you print without adjusting the brightness, typically you will look at your print and say, oh, that's a little too dark, or it's darker than what I thought the print was going to look like. And
so let's talk about that, because that's a big, I think a big issue, and one of the mistakes that people make, particularly if you're not printing yourself and you're preparing an image and you say, oh, I want, you know, print of that, I want to put it on the wall, oh, I'll go to one of these companies, and you upload the image and it all looks fine on the screen and your histogram looks great when you've processed it in Photoshop or whatever software you've used to create the print file, and then it comes back and you go, it's dull, and that's not right, it's not how I saw it on my screen. Well, I think what you need to appreciate is that the screen is backlit, and that's how you're looking at it digitally. When you're looking at a print, you're looking at reflected light, and you know, that creates a change, and you have to account for that. And it's, what do you think the answer to that is? It's just experience, really, isn't it? In my eyes.
Yeah, and it's to taste. You have to eyeball it, and sometimes you have to take chances. Like I'll do test prints with and actually my printer has the ability in the software I can run, you know, on one, you know, an 8 by 10, for instance, a number of different arrangements. It'll print that image all over the 8 by 10 in rows with different adjustments to contrast and brightness. So then I can pick the one I like the most and then adjust from there. You know, generally speaking, I have to brighten every image, and a lot of it's to taste. But if you're sending it out to a print shop, you have to let them know that. They should know that. If they're professional enough, they can make some adjustments on their end, I would think. But it's something you always have to be wary of.
Yeah.
Most people are surprised by that when they first start printing.
Sometimes when you go to these print shops, there is a thing you can toggle on and off when you order, which allows them to make color adjustments and brightness adjustments. And I think that if you're just starting off, that's probably not a bad thing to allow them some control over that.
Yeah.
Because, they will look at it and they'll, they're experienced people. They've seen the digital image, so they've seen how you want it to look in print, and they know that in, well, probably the majority of circumstances, they'll need to adjust the brightness to actually get that thing to pop and look as it does from a point of view of reflected light from the way you've looked at it on your screen, which is backlit. And I said they are two different things, so that's one thing to be mindful of. So if you've, and I guess people that are listening to this might well have had that experience before. They've had a print back that's just, they think is too dark, and they think the printer has made a mistake. It's probably the mistake in processing of the print file. And I think you need to appreciate that a file for print is different from a file you would use for social media or, in a digital space. So just be aware of that. And I know in particular, when I was doing the WildArt book, we did the book for the first competition, I was very, very mindful of a lot of those images, particularly the ones that had a lot of dark tones to them. And those are the ones that you tend to get more problem with, because with darker tones, you can see the detail when it's backlit, because you get, what the screen's able to show you in terms of numbers of different colors and tones is greater than what a printer will be able to deliver. And I just knew with some of those images that we were going to struggle to render some of the detail in the shadows. So I knew I had to adjust them. And there is something in Photoshop actually where you can preview, it's a print preview feature. I can't, don't ask me how you get to it or whatever, but there will be a print preview feature that you can use. So it will give you an idea of how the end print's going to look, bearing in mind the different color gamuts of the printer and, what you're seeing on the screen. So there will be a difference. And that goes for tones and, sort of shadows and highlight areas as well. So I think it's always a good idea to do that if you can, but just be aware of it. If you've got a very dark image and you've got detail that you want to show in the shadows, be mindful of the fact that you're going to have to brighten those areas beyond the point that you're comfortable with, perhaps on screen, to adjust for what's going to happen in the printing process, because it's different. So, yeah.
And
I wish I could explain it more eloquently than that, but you get my point.
Yeah, and like you were just saying, Rob, the print file, be wary too. I mean, some places I've had requests, or I've gotten quotes to print really large. I'm talking super large images, 24 by 36 and greater than that. And they're like, okay, just send the JPEG. Like, what? I mean, normally I print with TIFF files, and I upsize too. Like I use Topaz Gigapixel, a good example too, where if my file's fairly small, I'll upsize it. You want to upsize it. You want to make sure that your file is big enough and it's right sized enough to make that print happen and make it look good. Also sharpening too. One thing I found that when there's a difference between sharpening for the monitor, for social media, or any kind of online presentation versus sharpening for print, you have to sharpen more for print.
That's a really, really good point. That's a really good point that most people don't understand.
Yeah.
And why should they? But you're absolutely right. When you sharpen something and it looks good on the monitor, you would think that, okay, I've got this file at 300 DPI or 240 DPI, whatever it needs to be for the printer that you've got. It looks good to me on the screen. It's nice and sharp. That should translate into the printed image. Very often that's not the case. And you have to sharpen way more than you actually think you need. And when you look at it on the screen, it looks really horrible. but actually you're not comparing apples with apples. So it's a really that's a really difficult thing to get used to. But you have to, yes, you're right. You have to sharpen way more in the majority if that's what you want. If you want lots of detail and sharp and well-defined features in your image, then you have to sharpen way more. If softness is what you're trying to get across, then obviously you need to adjust for the effect that you want to create. But yeah, just be aware
Yeah.
that you have to sharpen way more than you
And
think.
and if you're printing for your living room wall, or you're printing for a gallery wall, always keep in mind the distance to where you're going to view the image, right? No one is gonna. I don't do this. I have a lot of my stuff hanging at my house, but no one walks up to an inch or two away from the print and stares at it and peeps at it. I mean, normally you're a decent, you're maybe 5 feet, 10 feet or whatever. If you're in a gallery and it's a large print, people are standing back a decent way. So you have to always, stand or look at the print from where most people will be viewing it, whether it's a gallery or you're in your house in your living room and whatnot. So don't try to pixel peep it, if you will, and walk up to it, and stare and go through everything, because nobody does that, obviously. So that's part of the sharpening process too. You have to consider how far away you are once the print's hanging on the wall.
Yeah, and I guess the only way of really doing it is to do some test prints and various different settings and find what works best for you with the sort of images that you print, the printer that you have, and generally the files that your camera produces. Because some people don't adjust. For example, a lot of cameras will, particularly for shooting JPEGs, which I'm sure most people aren't, but there are still some people out there that do it. There may be an element of in-camera sharpening happening with the images that you take in any event. So just be aware of that too. Yeah.
Good point. Yeah.
So,
and then, once you make your print too, you have to consider framing it, right? I'm kind of in this interesting, not really situation. I think it's a kind of a cool opportunity, but there's a gallery down the road in St. Michael's. I was talking to the gallery owner, and we came to an agreement. I'm going to have wall space, so I'm working to get everything done to get things hung up for sale here this weekend. And going through the process, I printed some of the images myself. Some of them were too big, so I had to farm them out to a shop to do the prints, and they came out great, and I'm working on everything. But the one thing that surprised me is the hardest decision for me. It wasn't necessarily the type of paper, the size of the prints, because I've been doing it for many years now. So I think I have an eye as to, the paper, the size, and also what images to use that might sell, right? So I'm going for things that are more Eastern Shore focused here, herons, osprey, stuff that's more local that people will get into, versus like pelicans or there are some pelicans here, but like puffins.
Yeah, so it's relatable stuff locally, basically.
Yeah, exactly. But one of the hardest things for me was choosing the frame, the color of the frame, the matting, and I wrangled over it for a while, and I just decided that unless it couldn't take a black frame and a white matte, everything I've decided to do is a black frame and a white matte, with the exception of the canvas prints that I made. Because, at the end of the day, I've thought about it, like, most people have different tastes. If I tried to do like a distressed wood or something that I might like, it won't cater to some people's taste. So I tried to be as in the middle of the road as possible. And I used black frames, white mats, and if somebody doesn't like it, they could always change the frame up on their own. That was my thought process on that.
Well, it's like trying to sell a house, isn't it? I mean, you don't paint it wacky colors, you go for vanilla, don't you, basically? Because you're trying to appeal to the masses. So I get it. And I think if you're doing that sort of thing and you're presenting your work, as a collection, as it were, then if you are too individual with all those pieces, they don't gel together as a proper collection. And I think the mount and the frame, it is an important thing, and I think you need some continuity if you're going down that road. I always remember when we did the Bird Photographer of the Year stuff, and I used to print that myself, and we always went for, as I said, that sort of thin black frame and a sort of off-white mount, because it just appeals. It works with most things, and of course, there was such a variety of work that it all has to hang together, if you pardon the pun, as a collection. So you need that continuity, and you
Consistency.
just
Yeah.
need something that works with the majority of things. I mean, sure, you could pick frames that work better with certain images, but as you know, to your point, it's all about personal taste at the end of the day. Once you step beyond that standard black frame, off-white type situation, it's all comes down to taste.
I agree. So, and what I've concluded is personalize if it's in your home and you're printing it for yourself. But if not, and you're going to sell and you're putting it in a gallery or someplace, black frame, white matte. I think it's very classic looking. It's a good combination. It brings the attention to the print. Works well. The only situations where I find that it did not work well, I have a couple high key images that I ran off as canvas. And if you have a high key image, obviously everything's predominantly white on the canvas. And if you put a white matte next to white, they're not going to match. It's going to look off. So I just put them in a floating black frame. So I didn't put a white matte on that. And I think that came out well. That was the only divergence in terms of how I had them framed. And I framed everything myself, actually. And you save money that way too. I order from there's a lot of frame companies, in the US where, and I'm sure everywhere, wherever you live, you can order frames. And I just do it myself. I have the linen tape and I have a little certificate of authenticity. And, I've got my
I can't
archival
tell you
pen and
how
all
long I have spent framing things for exhibitions for Bird Photographer of the Year
and
and
the
years
dust when
gone
you see
by.
like a hair
Oh
and
man.
I know it's
I mean, when you frame 30 or 40 prints at a go, it just takes forever. And as you say, you'll do them all and then you finish and then you go, I've missed that hair or that big blob of dust. And it just, as soon as you see it, you can't unsee it. And
no,
these things are going on display. So you've got to undo everything and then clean it all off again and then
and put
put
it
it back.
back in and the
It's a
hair's still
nightmare.
there.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. And of
Yeah.
course, the nature of these is not normally glass, is it? It's normally some sort of plastic laminate that they put. And of course, you know what that's like with static
Yeah.
electricity. It's just like everything just goes, and
Yeah.
any hair that falls, it's just sucked onto that surface, and you can't get rid of it. It is a nightmare. So yeah, that still haunts me. You
It's
frame something up, and then there's just this one little speck of
yeah.
dark dust or something that you just can't ever unsee, and it's there. Most people wouldn't even notice, but for me, I'd have to go back
And
and
after
do
all
it
that
again.
work, though, I still think, it's so rewarding because you have it hanging on the wall and people come in, it's physical, they see it. It's such a deeper experience when compared to, someone
Yeah.
scrolling through Instagram. Oh, that's cool. And then the thumb wheel, and they scroll to the next image, it's a whole different experience.
And I think it's a real conversation starter as well when you start putting your own work on the wall. And I'm quite a modest guy, really, and the thought of putting my stuff on display so people go, oh, that's really nice. I go, yeah, I took it. It's kind of not my
Yeah.
thing, but I do like to remind myself that I can take a picture every now and again, and it's nice to. I don't want to pay for other people's work. I guess is necessarily. I'd rather see my own work on the wall, and I want
Yeah.
to decorate it with something. I mean, there are areas where I've gone for other things. Obviously, it's not just all my pictures, but there are areas, and I tend to pick things that A, have an artistic merit to them, and B, mean something to me. So they tell, they remind me of something. So a
Hmm.
lot of my stuff actually isn't necessarily birds, it's more landscape. So it's more places I've been. Like if you come into my house and you come into the hall, I've got this great big panoramic black and white of the old manor store on Skye, which I took 8-9 years ago, something like that.
Hmm.
If you in the living room, but I mean that just meant something to me because of that trip. And then if you go into the living room, there's a picture of a Celtic rainforest that I took, when Jennifer and I got married, and we spent a week in Wales. So that it's nice because it has artistic merit, but B, it's a memory, and those are the sorts of things that I
Speaks to
print.
you.
And when you do things like that, and when you see that print coming out of the printer, there's nothing like the emotional feel you get when you're holding that print in your hands, or you, as you said, you're seeing it rolling off the printer, and it's now a physical thing that you've created this. Nobody else. You've been to the location, you've taken the picture, you've edited it, you know, and on your software, and then you've printed it. You've chosen the paper, you've chosen the printer, you've chosen the ink, and it's coming out. And then you've got it physically in your hands, and you can frame it, do it yourself if you want, and put it on the wall and say, that is all my own work, every single process.
It's a funny story. I was at a competition opening, and they had the gallery of, you know, all the images there, and it was open to the public, this particular one. So you had people in there, but you just had random folks, you know, moving in and out. So I was standing looking at a picture next to mine that was in the display, and this couple came up and they were kind of Googling over the image, which was great. It was interesting to hear that. I kind of felt voyeuristic, I guess, but whatever. So, and they looked at me and they said, you know, what do you think of this image? We really like that. And I said, oh, I think it's pretty good, actually. I said, as a matter of fact, it's one of my favorites in the exhibition. And they looked and they said, well, wait a second, because they had my picture next to it. And they're like, is that you? I said, yeah, it's me. But I kind of got a chuckle out of it. They were a bit embarrassed. There were other better pictures, for the record, but I kind of got a charge out of that. And when you see people, though, appreciate your work that way, that to me felt a million times better than a bunch of likes on a social media platform. You know, that was completely different.
You're so, you know, you're so removed from that process, aren't you, with social media in a way, because all you're doing is reviewing what people have written.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's nothing like listening to people talking about images. I used to love it when we did the Bird Photographer of the Year exhibition, and we'd go to Bird Fair, and you know, you'd listen to people talking about the images they were looking at and what they liked and what they didn't like. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah,
it's just fascinating.
It's a lot. It means a lot more than great shot with a thumbs up or something like that. Yeah,
nice. And all those people
took the time for that, but still, you know,
this is and you know that a lot of that is just people wanting you to follow their Instagram accounts. I mean, I hate to be cynical, but I mean, it's the way it is. So yeah, there's nothing quite like it. I mean, we could talk about this subject for hours because it is such a technical thing. And I think we should have a deeper dive into various aspects of it, I think, with other podcasts.
And what can be printed too is another deep dive in terms of, like, you know, I see a lot of like cool behavioral images of, you know, something eating something, and those typically don't work well as prints, and they don't sell well. People don't want that.
No, I mean, I guess that's a very personal thing, isn't it? I mean, do you want to hang something great, you know, sort of gruesome, if you like, although it might be interesting in a great picture on the wall? You don't want to, you know, put the lion eating the cute, you know, gazelle necessarily.
Maybe behind the bar after a rough night or something.
You know, on the wall. You want to put the, you know, the puffin and the, you know, the cutesy stuff, don't you? And the
Predator and Prey don't typically work well on the wall, unless maybe you can like make it. I'm joking, of course, like a Perseverance, or like, you know, how they have those pictures in corporate boardrooms. But that would.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm sure there are probably people, that in the U.S. administration that might have similar things on their wall.
Maybe in like a hedge fund or something on Wall Street. Yeah.
Yeah, mentioning no names. Anyway, let's not go there. Oh, it's interesting, but oh dear. So let's have a deeper dive over perhaps a series. We could do perhaps a series from take people through from start to finish, because it is a real art, actually. The printing itself, let's forget about the photography for now, but I think the printing itself is a real art. And if, you know, let us know in the comments, or send us a message if you want us to do a deeper dive into the whole, you know, printing process from sort of A to Z, if you like. Then let us know. We'll do that. But it was only going to be a short one, I think, this time around. So it's just a quick snapshot into our own experiences with printing and you know, and how we see it and how we use it. So I hope people have found that sort of entertaining and helpful. But I said, let us know if you want us to go into, a bit more detail, and perhaps we can get somebody on from one of the printing companies, for example, who can tell us, a bit more of the science behind, that process from their point of view.
And I've met printers who that's what they do. Obviously, that's their profession because it is a profession. And interesting enough, some printers aren't even photographers. They don't shoot. They just print. They just enjoy printing, which is kind of unique when you think about it. I think it's kind of cool. But you always assume that a printer is a photographer, but that's not always the case.
No, I think it's an art in itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
And to get the best out of something, you need to be a specialist. And yeah, I think that's probably a good thing, because I guess they're not just printing photography.
Yeah.
So anyway, hope people have enjoyed that. What is a shorter episode than normal, so apologies for that. But I guess we had to get a short one in there sometime.
We got to mix it up, Rob, every so often.
Exactly. So what's next for you in the next couple of weeks? I guess sort of just waiting for the migrants to
longer days, more sunshine, and in a couple of weeks we're going to have some migrants coming back, like pine warblers, Louisiana water thrush. We already had some red-winged blackbirds. They've been here for a couple of weeks. They're normally the first. They're regional migrants, but they're normally the first that are out here. And then the floodgates really start opening in April. And then shorebirds will come after that. So it's exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
I've seen things congregating, ready to leave. There was a great big flock of fieldfare today when I took Sky out for a walk that were just flocking together, and you just know they're going to be gone in a few days' time. I've had some nice sightings of short-eared owl over Salisbury Plain this winter. I guess they're going to be gone soon. I'm just waiting for the new stuff to arrive. Said the warblers are coming back.
It's fun to see the transitions.
I love spring and autumn are my favorite seasons, simply for that reason. It's because they're seasons of transition. And I think for me, summer probably photographically is my least favorite time.
I do most of my macro in the summer, actually.
Yeah.
That's a good time for macro, for pollinators and, butterflies, different bugs and stuff like that. I kind of putz around with that. For here in the summer, it's also good for herons and egrets, because they're always hanging out low tide. You can get some good shots of them, but otherwise it can
get out on the kayak and
it's great. I get out at like 8 p.m. It's sun go. It's amazing to shoot that late. I love it.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm looking forward to the summer, but I said you're right. For me, it's macro stuff generally in the summer months. But anyway, thanks, Josh. Thanks for the time as always. And I said I hope everybody enjoyed that. We'll do a deeper dive on that subject if people would like. Just put it in the comments or send us a message, and we'll put I tell you what we should do. Why don't we get a selection of images, maybe your images, maybe that perhaps your as part of your presentation in this gallery.
Oh, excellent. I'll
set those up on the Instagram account.
I'll take some photos and we can set it up on the account.
Yeah, so send some images. We'll put them on the Instagram account, and then we'll do some this is how they look in the gallery type shots. That would be really cool. Are they going in this weekend then, you say?
Yeah, this weekend. As a matter of fact, another artist that's in this gallery is Jay Fleming, who was on this podcast a little while back as well. So
so go and have a listen to that, because that was a really interesting discussion with him. I enjoyed that. He's slightly different photographer, obviously, to us. So you're sharing the space with him. Yeah.
There's only a few artists in there. I think there's maybe 2 or 3. So it'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to see how things do. And there's a lot of foot traffic in this particular town of St. Michael's, and I'm lucky enough where this area is very nature focused. There's a waterfowl festival. Everybody, so people like this type of art in the area, and there's a lot of tourists that come through. So it's a good area, I think, to present your work from a nature standpoint.
Well, so take some photos, and we'll get them up on the Instagram account. I guess for me, what's next really is getting to the plans for WildArt for this year together. It's taken me a while. I've had a few personal things to deal with at the beginning of the year, which I wasn't expecting. So that's the reason for the delay. But I've got a plan. Let's put it that way. I've got a plan. It's going to be slightly different because I think all these things, they need to evolve over time, and it needs to achieve or do something that I would like it to do as well. All will become clear, I guess, when I sort it out. But I'm in the middle of that, so expect an announcement on that competition and maybe an expansion on the whole sort of WildArt brand, if you like, the whole ethos of it, taking it down, a different avenue perhaps. So yeah, all sort of plans in the making. But the competition, yeah, I get plans for that out in the next week or two. So look out for that. Other than that, yeah, it's just going to be getting out there with a camera and enjoying this season of transition. So anyway, thanks again, Josh, and thanks everybody for listening. And we'll see you all again next time.
See you all. Thanks.
You have been listening to the Wildlife Photography Podcast. If you have enjoyed the content, then please help us to spread the word by sharing a link on your social media platforms, giving us a like, and leaving us a comment. See you all again next time.